Thank you for attending the first Analytics Community Ask the Experts. We have Ben Gaines, who is really excited to share some recent improvements with Analysis Workspace, as well as get some features, or listen to your guys' feedback in regards to features. Some things to note is that this is something that is brand new we are trying out as a community team. If you guys like the things that we talk about here, I definitely intend to have additional meetings like this in the future. Second thing, which I see that you guys have already taken full advantage of, is that I would love for you guys to continue using the chat pod and provide your feedback while we are discussing the presentation. I'll be manning the chat pod throughout the meeting today. And if you have any comments on how you use Analysis Workspace, we'd love to hear it. Also, if you have any specific features and you'd like to flesh them out with the community, we would love to hear that as well. If you guys would like to have an opportunity to present at one of these community sessions, if you have like a piece of analytics knowledge that you're just itching to share with the community, I would love to get in touch with you. There will be contact info for me at the end for us to do that. So without further ado, Ben Gaines, Product Manager for Adobe Analytics on Analysis Workspace.
Thanks, Russ, and hi, everyone. It looks from the chat pod like there are still several of you who can't hear. So, Russ, if you don't mind manning that and pointing everyone in the direction of the phone, and hopefully the issues with getting into the session via intercall have been resolved. Awesome. Well, it's great to be with everybody. I see in the list of attendees a number of old friends and new acquaintances as well. So. Happy to be spending the next hour or so, or I guess 45 minutes now with you. I'm Ben Gaines. I'm a Senior Product Manager on the Adobe Analytics Product Management team, and have been heavily involved with the Analysis Workspace project from its inception a few years ago to release, and looking forward into the future for what we want to do with it. And we'll cover all of that, I think, in this session, and try to focus on what's coming, and then make sure we leave some time for you to give feedback on things you'd like to see. We've got a bunch of ideas that have been submitted in the idea exchange, and if you haven't been out there to vote on the things that you want to see in Analysis Workspace, I strongly recommend that you do that. It's been great to see some of the ideas coming in, and I think over the last few months, Analysis Workspace has been by far the hottest topic in the idea exchange. Anyway, let's dive in. I want to do just a quick overview of what Analysis Workspace is for anyone on the call who may be part of the community but hasn't had a chance to play around with Analysis Workspace. I'm going to try to make this brief because I know probably most of you are familiar with Analysis Workspace, but Analysis Workspace is it's the newest environment in Adobe Analytics, and some of the points of emphasis in it's an analysis tool like ad hoc analysis or reports and analytics. It's a flexible project-based environment, and by that we really mean that it's a place where you can go to do ongoing work. You can start a project, start an analysis project, save it, pick it up later, and it's designed to be very flexible. There are no canned reports. There's nothing that you don't go run a products report in Analysis Workspace. You build everything out of the dimensions, metrics, segments, date ranges, visualizations that you want. So it's really designed to meet your needs, to kind of allow you to create whatever's in your mind, whatever you envision in terms of the analysis that you want to do. It's based around the concept of different tools, and this is going to be a big focus for us going forward, something we'll talk about a little bit at the end, where you kind of are able to combine different tool sets in a single view. We'll talk more about that as we go. I talked about the customization, so I'm not going to spend time on that, but and this looks like this little purple line is a little bit off of alignment. It's supposed to be emphasizing that it's designed to let you tell a story, and that's something that as we look at the roadmap for Analysis Workspace and the things we want to get done, that's one of the tenets that we hold most dear, I guess, with this environment. That you can that we want to create a place where you can have sort of a logical flow of a story that your users of Adobe Analytics can comprehend very easily and can use to kind of understand the story of your customer journey that you're trying to facilitate with analytics. I mentioned that it's kind of a tool-based concept, and the first two tools in Analysis Workspace are Freeform Analysis, which is that flexible, almost kind of pivot table-like capability, and then Cohort Analysis, which you can add and integrate with your other visualizations and things in Analysis Workspace right alongside of them. I mentioned future tools. We'll come back to this slide later and talk more about kind of what that means. I can't give too much specificity there, but at least I can help kind of paint the vision, hopefully, and give you some hints about what's coming soon on the tool front. And then the other big piece of Analysis Workspace is this concept of curation and sharing, where you're building projects and then simplifying them for your business users and sharing them out so that they can begin to mature in their use of Adobe Analytics and do some simple data exploration on their own with the dimensions, metrics, and segments that are actually relevant for different teams in your organization. I talked about these two tools. For the sake of time, I'm going to largely skip this. Hopefully, you've had a chance to play around with these. Freeform Analysis is really that fundamental kind of the building block, and you know, we sort of expect that Freeform Analysis on its own with its various visualizations will be the bulk of Analysis Workspace usage because it's so flexible and allows you to structure your queries in just about any way that you want. Some key highlights to cover quickly. Unlimited breakdowns and comparisons. Hopefully you've had a chance to notice this. You can compare theoretically an unlimited number of segments, date ranges, metrics. You can do as many breakdowns as you need to do, and importantly, and I think the screenshot is very, very small, but it actually shows it pretty well, you can break down a dimension by a segment by a date range, or a date range by a value of a dimension by a segment. There's just tons of flexibility there, and you know, just awesome how deep into your data you can go with Analysis Workspace. This piece of Analysis Workspace is very similar to ad hoc analysis in this regard, where you can go as many levels deep as you want. That drag and drop concept, and another thing I'll mention, and because this is a little bit of a because this is a community event, and that assumes that most of you are pretty active in your use of Adobe Analytics and maybe active in our community. I'll be a little less formal than maybe I normally would, and I'll talk a little more about kind of the key tenets that we think about when we're designing for Analysis Workspace going forward. And one of those is this ability to drag and drop in as much as it makes sense and is possible. We want to let you drag and drop anything anywhere. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes you can't, you know, have one metric on top of another metric in Analysis Workspace because that just doesn't make any sense. But wherever possible, we want to kind of default toward, well, what would happen if we let you drop a segment here, or what would happen if you could combine these two, you know, a dimension and a metric by dragging them, you know, in this particular way. So I think that just speaks to our emphasis on flexibility and wanting to let you do as much here as you can based on your imagination. So based on your sort of analytics creativity, so to speak. Number 3, This is designed to be an application on the web, which is actually really neat. So we've got keyboard shortcuts, we've got right-click actions. Often, and this is kind of, in a way, our success has become our challenge with Analysis Workspace, where we've heard tons of really positive feedback from you and from your colleagues and peers on Analysis Workspace, but often we're finding that there's so much in there that it's sometimes hard to find. And so one of the little, I guess, tips I would give out is when in doubt, try right-clicking and see what happens. I'll give an example. Some of you may know or may not know that you can add a description, a text description, to any data table visualization or to the whole project overall. And the way that you do that is by right-clicking in the kind of in the header of the visualization or the project, and then there'll be an edit description option there. So just allows us to pack a lot of functionality into this experience by treating it more as an application than as a website. And I think that's really exciting for the future and some of the things that we want to do that we'll talk a little bit about later on here today. Diverse layout options. This really speaks to the storytelling nature of Analysis Workspace. We wanted to make it possible for you to lay things out however you want. This screenshot's actually a little bit old in the sense that you can, this has the ability to resize by 25%. So you can have 25%, 50% width, 75%, 100%. You now actually have the ability to do thirds. You can do 33%, 66%. You can get a lot more granular with how you size things and lay them out. All of these items are draggable and rearrangeable. So you can really kind of arrange them in a way that tells the story that you want to tell. Number 5, interactive visualizations. This is actually something that they're not yet as interactive as we want them to be. We want to in the future add things like right-clicking on a bar in a bar graph like you see here in the screenshot and letting you break that down by something, or letting you launch a contribution analysis by right-clicking on a visualization like that. There are a bunch of great sort of interactive ideas that we have there for visualizations for the future. But you can, at the moment, at least mouse over them. Now, sort of getting into the curation concept, this idea of simplifying and reducing the overwhelmingness of analytics. And I think generally as data sets grow, as analytics data sets grow, both in Adobe Analytics and in other tools, BI tools and so on and so forth, it becomes a significant barrier to business users who aren't everyday analysts actually getting into data and getting into the tools, because there's just so many dimensions, so many metrics, so many segments that you can apply. It can be a turnoff even before you get into the nuances of understanding and implementation and understanding how to work with data and things. So curation is all about limiting that overwhelmingness and letting you share out a project to a team or to individuals in a simplified, kind of streamlined way. I don't know, Russ, I don't know if you want me to answer this question while we're at this point, but I can. It looks like there was a question from the chat. Can you aggregate numbers across report suites? That's a great question, and I anticipated that one. It's probably our number one feature request at this point for Analysis Workspace, and I can tell you I can't give you specifics around ETA or anything like that, but I can tell you that we're absolutely looking at how to at doing that, and we're trying to do it as well as we can, as quickly as we can. And there are some user experience considerations that we're trying to work through and make sure that one of the tricky things, just again on the sort of the informal community note here, is we feel like, and the feedback has been that we created this really great thing that has a ton of potential and needs a few features like having multiple report suites in the same project and things. Um, and we really don't want to do anything that compromises that great experience. I personally, and I know our engineering manager for Analysis Workspace, Brandon George, is on the call as well, and we're both very we want to push this thing forward as quickly as we can, but we really want to make sure that we don't do anything to introduce unnecessary complexity and take away from what we think kind of sets this experience apart a little bit. So. Great question. I should clarify that in the question it looks like you said, can you aggregate numbers across report suites? That's a little bit of a different feature, I think. When you start aggregating, you have to worry about duplication of visits and visitors and things like that that make aggregating across report suites a little bit trickier, and something that's probably outside of Analysis Workspace specifically, but a great request. What we are looking to do in Analysis Workspace is at least give you the ability to have multiple report suites in the same project. So you can have, say, your mobile app report suite and your web report suite, and be able to have that data side by side in the same view. I'll take one more question at this point. Looks like Anthony from Razorfish asks, can workspaces be locked so they're view-only and more dashboard-like? That is a great question. Also something that we hear a little bit from time to time. I think there's an exchange idea on that one. That one, to be perfectly honest, I don't think we have that's not as high a priority for us at the moment. But that is something that, because we've heard it a few times, we're certainly cognizant of it, and it'll stay in our minds. I'm going to save the rest of the questions that are coming in for a little bit later, not just to not kill the flow of the walkthrough, but they're great. The questions are great. Keep them coming in. This is exactly, I think, what we wanted for this session. So keep asking those questions. I am actually going to skip this slide because I think we covered the sharing, and project management is interesting, but it's kind of is what it is. It's interesting, but not as significant maybe as some of the other features. So let's talk about what we've done recently. One of the great things about Analysis Workspace is that we've been able to iterate really quickly. We did a public beta beginning about a year ago, and we had a few releases between the start of the public beta and September when we released Analysis Workspace. And then since then, we've been able to do I think we've had 2 other releases since September that introduced new features and functionality into Analysis Workspace. And you'll continue to see us add to Analysis Workspace as frequently as we can. It's really fun, kind of the agile nature of getting stuff pushed into Analysis Workspace. And mostly these little additions are well, little. They're not the major features are going to continue to come probably a couple times a year, but we've been able to make nice little improvements as we go, and we'll continue to do that. So just in January, we added the ability to undo. So Control or Command Z now works in Analysis Workspace, and there's also an undo button. This is awesome. I use this all the time when I drag something over onto a table and then I realize it wasn't quite the thing I wanted, or maybe I go a few steps down the road in my kind of my train of thought for analysis, and then kind of hit a dead end or hit a wall, and I want to go back and maybe pursue a different course. And so I can just hit Command Z a few times, and I'm right back where I was a few minutes ago. So awesome addition there. Conditional formatting, very similar to that same feature in Excel. So with any table where you have a metric as a column header, you can click on the gear icon in the metric header and turn on conditional formatting. You can adjust the thresholds for high, medium, and low, and I just think it's awesome for calling out calling out the outliers in a data set that you're pulling. Bullet graphs. This is actually kind of my favorite, and if you haven't heard me talk about bullet graphs, I love that we added this because it's a great way to show progress toward a goal, which is something that I know is important to many of you. It's something that we hear a lot. You know, we want Adobe Analytics to be a place where you can focus on hitting your goals, hitting your team's goals, and bullet graphs are a great way. You can add in your kind of your high, medium, and low goals for a certain metric, and then bullet graph will just track the progress toward that goal in a really easy to read way. So it's great for sharing and curation as well. Quick little story about bullet graphs. These were actually, I think they were invented, or at least have been heavily evangelized by the data visualization guru Stephen Few. And he, in his book Information Dashboard Design, he gives a bunch of really terrible examples of analytics dashboards. Fortunately, not in Adobe Analytics, but in it he challenges in these, you know, after kind of showing these bad data visualizations, he talks about bullet graphs and says, I challenge any vendor, any software vendor to use these bullet graphs. You're welcome to use them. I guess he did invent them because he was kind of giving vendors the go ahead and steal his idea, and we did. So good for us. I think his book was published in like 2005, so it only took us 10 years to get there. But better late than never. Tree maps. You're probably familiar with these. Great at showing relative density and metrics, kind of showing turning metrics into an area view so that you can kind of visually pick out your top values or top metrics. Scatter plots, again, pretty self-explanatory, but these are now in there as well. These are great for plotting two different metrics, and you can actually do a third metric in Analysis Workspace, and that third metric will be visualized by showing by the radius of the dot of the plot, or sorry, of the dot on the scatter plot. And link to project. So you can share Analysis Workspace projects now by sending your colleagues a direct link by going to the link to project option on the menu. Okay, so let's talk about, I know everyone loves to hear about what's coming soon and be in the know, so let's talk about a few things that are coming very soon, and I bet we'll answer some of your questions in the process about feedback that you've had. So the big one, scheduled projects. Everyone, this is along with being able to have multiple report suites in the same project, this is the #1 feature request. They're 1 and 1A, or number 1 and number 2. So automatically sending projects to yourself and your colleagues by email. This will include PDF format, and having seen the PDFs, they are extremely hot. The team has done a great job with turning Analysis Workspace projects into PDF and maintaining kind of the sexiness of the visualizations and the data. So team's done a great job. This is actually in beta at the moment, so when I say coming very soon, I mean coming very soon. It's release of this is pretty imminent, and we're really excited about that. And we hope that it allows you to even better democratize data and get people really excited about Analysis Workspace. I mentioned PDF, and they are indeed stunning visuals, if we do say so ourselves. Comparisons is something we're working on. So, and this is one we've heard a lot as well as a feature request, letting you do really easy year-over-year, month-over-month comparisons, or just generating kind of the difference between the values in two columns really easily. So this was something that we have identified for a long time as important to Analysis Workspace. We didn't quite get it in time for the release in September last year, but it's something that we continue to hold as a highly valued addition. So we're working on that as well. Removing line items. This is a littler one, but it's actually kind of neat. So if you add a dimension to a table, Sometimes there are values in that table that you don't want, values of that dimension that you don't want. Maybe it's just a none item. Maybe it's a campaign that that's an outlier and you want to remove it from the data set. You can do that usually using filters, but that can be time consuming, and sometimes you just want to remove a few values. So you'll have a little X next to each value, and you can remove the ones that you don't want to see. So kind of a neat addition there. And redo, which is obviously the opposite of undo. And these are just a handful of things that we want to add. And of course, there are more that I can't share right now. The ones that you see here are the things that we're able to, with the exception of scheduled projects and PDF export, these are things that we want to just kind of release as they're ready. There are bigger things, and I'll talk a little bit about that here. Let me pull this slide back up. Looks like it's, yeah. So I've highlighted in red kind of the areas where I think where we want to put maybe the most investment going forward at a kind of at a roadmap level for Adobe Analytics. So when we talk about future tools, and I think that's really the bulk of it, of course we're going to continue to, well, I'll talk about shared projects in a minute, but with future tools, what we're talking about here really is pretty big like additions to help you better to help you do better and different kinds of analysis. I'm finding it a little hard to put my finger on it, but at a high level, I can say that these are things like data science tools, tools that allow you. A good example might be contribution analysis. So bringing contribution analysis into Analysis Workspace, adding tools to help you understand things like acquisition sources and looking at different segments and kind of comparing them. Sort of bigger tools to help you do analysis in different ways. I guess I don't know how else to say it, but we're going to do several of these. And the great thing about Analysis Workspace, I think, is that you're going to be able to combine them, and they're going to be able to interact in certain ways. Being able to put to take an example that you are familiar with, being able to put a cohort analysis right next to a data table with a visualization, and maybe have some pathing visualizations in there as well, some pathing tools. It just allows you to again paint that picture of who your customers are, how their journey is going, how they're engaging with your brand, and where you can be doing maybe a better job with your marketing efforts. And so these future tools, you'll hear about some of them probably at Adobe Summit for those of you who are attending, and you'll hear about them over the next several years, and we've got a handful of them in the pipeline that our engineering team and our design teams are working on. In terms of shared projects, the reason that I've got that highlighted is really to call out that a lot of what we're going to do with Analysis Workspace going forward over a long period of time is geared around making the data very accessible and really kind of simplifying the analysis process in some ways for your business users. So a good example of this would be take say anomaly detection. If we have anomaly detection baked into Analysis Workspace in such a way that running any line graph automatically calls out anomalies, that makes it much easier for your business users who maybe don't know that anomaly detection is a thing, to take advantage of something that's unique to Adobe Analytics and to the data that we have in our back end. So by so doing, we take sort of something that previously was maybe an analyst-specific feature or capability, and make it hopefully more accessible to end users and business users who are not analysts. And so that's kind of that's some of the focus for what we want to do in the future with Analysis Workspace. There are tons of other things that we think a lot about. Speed is a big one. making the workflow really fast, so that you can create segments faster and drag and drop things even faster than you can today. And we're going to continue to improve on that as well. I think that is it in terms of my stuff. I'm going to answer these questions unless anyone thinks that there's something better to do. Russ, is that what I should? Looks like there are about 10 questions, and I'll try to answer them quickly because I know we've only got 20 minutes left.
Yeah, and actually, if you'd like me to ask them to you, I would be happy to do a Q&A.
Sure. Yeah, that's
okay.
Great. I think we're on the fourth or the second question. The one from Dick Sporting Goods.
Sure. Can you set Analysis Workspace as the default landing page on login?
You absolutely can, actually. I probably should have demoed instead of spending so much time in PowerPoint. But the easiest way to do that is if you go to Analysis Workspace. Great question, by the way. If you go to Analysis Workspace, you'll be taken to what we call the project launch page. It's where you have the blue Create New Project button, and you've got your projects listed down below. There's a link below the blue button that says Set as Landing Page, and that's what I've got as my landing page. You also can set individual projects as your landing page if you want to. For me, I'm usually doing ad hoc stuff, like I'll log in to just answer a question real quick, so I don't want to go to a particular project, but you can do that from within the project. You'll see a Set as Landing Page option in the toolbar, the gray toolbar at the top of the project. So you've got two options there.
Great. Is Analysis Workspace available for app analytics if you are using Adobe App Tracking, like mobile?
Yeah, It's so all of your mobile data it flows into Adobe Analytics ultimately. And if you're using the Adobe Mobile UI, the Mobile Services UI specifically for mobile apps, that's data that's coming from Adobe Analytics, and then Mobile Services extends that by letting you do in-app messaging and A/B testing and things that are kind of specific to mobile and that pertain more to other solutions in Adobe Marketing Cloud. But the data all lives in Adobe Analytics, so you should have all of those dimensions and metrics available for you in Analysis Workspace, and you can build projects based on any of it.
Great. With the introduction and progression of Analysis Workspace, what is the future of ad hoc analysis?
Yeah, this was, I knew it was only a matter of time before someone on here asked this question. We continue to support ad hoc analysis, and there are still features that are being added to ad hoc analysis. I will be pretty honest, though, that we hope that Analysis Workspace is the future of Adobe Analytics, and that we can eventually turn it into an environment where that you prefer over ad hoc analysis. And we've already heard, fortunately, in several cases where analysts have kind of migrated their work to Analysis Workspace over ad hoc analysis for a variety of reasons. But we do hope to get there. We have no plans to de-invest in ad hoc analysis or stop supporting it or anything, at this point. But we frankly hope we get there at some point. Great.
What technology is used behind the scenes to build all of this?
It is. I don't know if we can. Maybe Brandon should weigh in on chat. But the front end is in Angular at the moment, and that so it is a sort of a single page application. Behind the scenes, Brandon says standard web technologies. So behind the scenes, I'm not quite as sure I can answer that just because I don't know. But maybe Brandon can weigh in on the chat and answer that one for you. Very interesting question. I've never gotten that question before. I've gotten somewhat familiar with Angular as I've worked with the engineering team that built it, that built the front end, but the middleware layers I'm a little less familiar with. Brendan says does not use Flex. Okay, so I think I will we'll move on from that one.
Okay. Are there any best practices around preventing Analysis Workspace tables from becoming too unwieldy?
Okay, so this is a phenomenal question. I don't think there are best practices per se. We did have an issue that some of you may have experienced. I'll just be perfectly honest. It's fixed now, so I can be honest about it. We had an issue where if you had, I think it was more than 10 columns, you'd get an error and it would kind of fall apart. When I talked about kind of our effort to continually optimize and make this thing faster and faster, a big piece of that, maybe the big piece of that, is kind of the understanding that your queries are going to get more and more complex, and so we want this thing to be able to handle as much as you can throw at it. And there are some to be honest, there are some challenges with doing that on the web, but we believe that over time we're going to be able to meet and conquer those challenges. If you go back 3 years, we sat in a room and there were people, probably myself included, who said, I don't know if you can do something as flexible as what we're trying to do on the web. And the engineering team has just hit a home run and surprised many of us doubters. And I think they'll continue to do that. And so I don't have any specific advice. I mean, I've seen projects that have so many nested breakdown, like 15 nested breakdowns across 20 columns with multiple segments on each one, and yeah, I mean those become a little unwieldy in the browser at the moment, but we want to solve that.
Great. Can additional features like comment boxes, flags, or arrows be included within visuals?
That is something that we had kind of talked about it originally. So totally agree. First of all, great question. Totally agree that being able to add a description to the visualization is nice, but what you really want to do is point to a certain bar in a bar graph, or circle a data point on a line graph or something, and add a little annotation there, that kind of thing. I think that's what you're getting at here. And it was something we talked about. We really wanted to get it done. We didn't manage to get it done before the release, but it's definitely on our general backlog to do at some point in the future. For the very reason that you mentioned, it's really helpful in clarifying trends, and especially if you're sharing these things out to business users and executives, being able to kind of tell them exactly what you want them to focus on is really important.
Great. So in short, let's show our support in the Ideas Exchange thread on it.
Yeah, I think there's one. If there's not, then start one.
Okay,
I would vote
great.
for it if I were allowed to vote.
Is there a way to turn off the % calculation that comes default when you drag a metric over?
Yeah, great. Good question there. If you click on the gear icon on that metric that you dragged over, you should have a little. If you mouse over the metric header, you should have a gear icon. In there, you should have the option of turning that off. I usually turn it off. Not usually. Sometimes, maybe 50-50.
So there were a lot of comments in +1 regarding funnel in Analysis Workspace. Yeah. Is that planned?
That's a good question. Here's where you can take my nervousness as what you will. I want to tell you more than I probably should. In short, yeah, it's being planned. We're one of the things that obviously is missing from Analysis Workspace is pathing and funnels, and those are obviously critical. They're important parts of analysis in Adobe Analytics, and so you can expect that things like that will come over at some point in the hopefully not too distant future.
Okay. Can you add a custom description to a metric column?
Ooh, that is an interesting idea. I actually don't think I've heard that idea before. You can't at the moment. The best you'd be able to do is add a description to the table, and in the description, you can have like multiple lines in the description. You can do carriage returns and things, so you could kind of do a carriage return, describe the table and then do a carriage return and describe the metrics or something like that. But that's probably your best workaround at the moment. I like that idea. Please submit that to the Idea Exchange, and we'll see if it gets +1'd.
So to the asker of that question, make sure that we get an Ideas Exchange thread on that, and to everybody who wants to see that, make sure that you promote it. Okay. Is there the ability to create multiple tabs within a project?
That's interesting. If we had more than 9 minutes, I'd dive into that and ask you. This is actually something, to be perfectly honest, that we've gone back and forth on, and the feedback we've gotten has been kind of mixed as well. So I'd be interested to hear. This is a good one to submit to the Idea Exchange, where you can be sort of long form in describing your why you want tabs. The reason that we go back and forth is trying to think through the advantages and disadvantages of doing that within a project, but you can do tabs in your browser. So kind of the thinking goes, what's the advantage of doing different tabs in one project versus doing different projects and doing them in different browser tabs? I think is kind of how we've talked about it. I know this is something that Ad Hoc Analysis does. Kind of the difference, I guess, between the reason that we don't see it as quite as important in Analysis Workspace is that, unlike Ad Hoc Analysis, in Analysis Workspace you can put multiple visualizations right next to each other in the same project. So that's kind of I think the part of the use case that is solved by tabs in Ad Hoc Analysis is that you can it's a way to have multiple queries in the same project, whereas that's kind of natively solved in Analysis Workspace. Okay.
Well, we are very much so running out of time. Let me give you guys some resources to further our discussion. I want to make sure that your guys' questions are all answered in regards to this. So if we did not get to your question today, make sure that you post in the Analysis Workspace forum, and we will make sure that it gets an answer. If you have a suggestion that was not talked about today, be sure to go to the Ideas Exchange and let your voice be heard. Additionally, if you want to contribute to the direction and show your support for Analysis Workspace on what features are prioritized, look at the existing threads in the Ideas Exchange and promote the ones that you want to see in there. I've also included links to the General Analytics Ideas Exchange and Adobe Analytics Forum. And lastly, if you have any analytics knowledge that you would like to share with the community, hit me up. I would be more than happy to work with you and provide you with an avenue to share that knowledge with the community. A huge, huge thank you to Ben for taking time out of his super busy pre-summit schedule and sharing this info with us. And a huge thank you to all of you for attending. I'll be ending the audio bridge, but if you guys want to continue in chat for the next little while, I'll leave the Connect session open. So again, thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone for attending, and I hope you guys have a great day.